we're back to once a week. We told you we are going to be back to once a week when we're back to once a week. And I know I said I was going to go last night, but as much as I enjoy hearing myself talk for an extended period of time, I like to limit the amount of soliloquies I have to go on the podcast. So here we are in rare form. We have not just one, but potentially two guests tonight. And luckily, one of them is a team that we're probably going to end up talking about. So I want to welcome Colts back to the podcast. Rory, thanks for joining.
Absolutely. It is good to be back on the airwaves.
Excellent. It's good to have you here. And I've been told that Eagles will be joining us a little bit later. And again, reminder to everybody listening, it's fun being on the podcast. Come join, do this every once in a while. You'll enjoy it. Chance to bond with some of the league. And who knows, maybe you'll get some extra trades done. But nonetheless, last time we started going division by division, a little bit deeper dive into teams, talking about things that they should be thinking about for the offseason. We tried to shake it up and go a little out of order and started with the AFC West because no one really ever starts with the AFC West, and then went to the East. So now we'll talk about the North and the South and talk about the things that they should be doing there. So again, we'll go sort of team by team, talk about where they are, talk about some of the assets they have, and some of the things we'd like to see them do. Some of the teams have already kind of determined where they are in the pecking order of the league, kind of what their offseason is going to look like. And for some of these, it's going to be a lot more wide open in terms of what they have to be doing. So we'll kind of get it started here and see where it takes us. So, in honor of Rory joining the podcast, we'll go ahead and start with the AFC South. And we'll work ourselves from the bottom up. So, the first team we can talk about is the Indianapolis Colts. I guess, Rory, what do you say? Should I kind of go through an overview of your team so far, or do you want to kind of talk about how your team is shaping up to come into the offseason?
Yeah, feel free to give an overview. And then, I can
All
talk
right.
about my plans.
So you were one of the teams that was very dedicated to the rebuild process last year. Anything that was really scoring points, you didn't go as far as Bill did. I mean, it takes a lot
You
to go
do.
as far as Bill did. Um, but you dedicated yourself to make sure that you were well positioned for the rebuild. So acquiring injured players, utilizing your cap space as a dumping ground. You have 88.5 million in terms of dead cap right now, and have Captain Kirko sitting there on your team. Is one of those contracts that was kind of tougher to hold. But as a process, as you didn't shy away from points if it was a good player to sort of build around. So you have a lot of, I'd say, a lot more pieces which are active on your roster than a lot of other teams right now that either went the no points and give me picks or the injured player route like I did. So Michael Penix is on there. Um, let's kind of keep going down here. Byron Young is on here. Derek Harmon, the rookie, injured for the first part of the year, but really came on strong second half. Mohamed Kamara, again, hasn't had a chance to really flash yet, but maybe things will work themselves out there. Aziz Ojolari, injured. Odafe Owe started to come into his own. You got him a 2-year extension. Nick Scourton was a rookie. I know you targeted in the draft, and I think you had to actually trade for to make sure you got. But you were aggressive about adding the rookies and the youth that you wanted, in addition to draft picks, which included my third overall pick for a while, which I think went as part of the Penix trade. But now you're sitting there with, I think, number 2 overall. You've got a good set of young talent, probably not quite ready to make the jump to the division, but it's that good sort of foundational set of pieces that you need to build a roster around to continue sort of moving over and into the next phase of the rebuild.
Yeah, 100%. You know, there were some tough pieces. Losing that third overall pick for Michael Penix, I say losing because at the time it did not really seem like it was going to be a top 3 pick. Things fell how they did, and I ended up giving up a pick I probably would have preferred to keep for a quarterback that I like, but I'm not in love with. But other than that, yeah, I mean, you said it. I got some pieces I like. Derek Harmon was a big piece of target in the draft. Nick Skirton, the same way. I really liked him, and I think he's showed in his rookie season that he looks like a stalwart for the Panthers moving forward. I picked up Jock for a relatively inexpensive amount of capital. That one's weird. I have no idea if this man will ever push the ball. I really hope he would, because he was he's a top 3 linebacker before he got hurt. But yeah, I mean, I'm in a good spot. I'm happy with where I'm at. Definitely not ready to make that jump in contender unless by some miracle I draft 7 of the next absolute surefire Hall of Famers as rookies, but I think that's probably unlikely.
You know what? If you do that, I'd say you earned it. And I think probably you're going to end up on a couple of radio shows saying, how in God's name, depending, especially with the format of our league, did you pull that off? But
no kidding. And then, there goes my train of thought. It's gone. Never mind. It'll come back at an inopportune moment later.
Well, that's how it likes to go. So in terms of future draft picks, just kind of confirming here. So let me get the right setup to look at this. So if I go to you are the Colts.
I did remember
you have 3 first-round picks. You've got your pick, which is number 2 overall, I believe. The Bears, which was probably in the 10s, and the Ravens, which is, I think, in the teens, right?
Yeah, it's the 2nd, 13th, and 15th, I believe.
Yep, and then you've got 2nd and, I think, 13th in the 2nd round, and then Falcons was probably, a top 8 pick? Or
yeah, pretty close, number 9.
So that's just doing some back of the envelope math here. 6 picks in the top 45, which again gives you a lot of good stuff to build from. Then 2 picks in the 3rd. This is again before any comp picks go out. I don't know if there's anything on your roster that would really justify a comp pick. And then most of your draft capital for 27 is still intact. You have your 1st and your 2nd. You have 3 fourths, none of which are yours, but they're mine, Patriots, and Cardinals. And then 2 in the 5th. So for all intents and purposes, you kind of have your 27 draft capital intact, and you have a nice bit of extra capital in 26. So I think you're well positioned with that, and now it's a question of kind of where do you go from there. I think number 2. Look, let's just kind of cut through the crap there. The overall, people are thinking that Love is probably going 1. Which would leave you looking deadpan at Mendoza. You have Kirk Cousins, who, frankly, you might be able to move once everything resets and people have some cap space because he may have earned himself a job last year. You have Michael Penix to build around. So Mendoza is a bit of a luxury. Obviously, that's the pick, but it's a question of, do you trade it for more there? So that's probably the first decision point. And then I love where you go kind of, in the middle of the 1st round. I think, there are tiers that are already starting to form here, but I say it every year, kind of around either the mid 1st or late 1st is when we start getting into the Wild West. And I can see the Wild West starting a little bit early this year based off of kind of how things are going. So I think you could definitely divert and get yourself some nice premium pieces in that end of 1st round, top IDP range right there.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. It's definitely a year. It's a very odd year. It feels weird. There's a couple guys that are the absolute top of the top. You got Mendoza, you got Love, you got a couple receivers that are kind of bunched up at the top, and then you got Sadiq. After that, I mean, what is that going to be? The 7th overall pick? It is really a crapshoot. It's going to be based on where someone lands in the actual NFL draft. It's going to be based on pre-draft measurables. It's going to be based on, some of these guys, I'm sure it's going to come down to did he interview well? Did he sound like a player that's dedicated to being, professional, or did it sound like a head case like George Pickens or Odell Beckham Jr.? Because that's going to have to be considered. But yeah, I won't say what I'm going to do at number 2, and I won't say what I think the Broncos are going to do at number 1, but a couple months ago, I was pretty confident I knew what was going to happen at number 1, and now I truly have no idea. I know he's been interested in acquiring 102, I'm sure, so that he doesn't have to make the decision at number 1. He could just go Love and Mendoza and be happy. But yeah, I mean that's pretty much it. That first 10 picks is usually locked up. There's 10 or 12 guys that's confident these will be the first 12. And this year, it's definitely not the case. It's about half of that.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of a good thing. It puts those of us who do the work, who do the analysis, who look at the tape, gives us kind of a leg up, and it also makes the talking head kind of, I'll call it, um, you know, chalk run a little bit shorter, which I think is more fun for most of us. Of hey, this person went, this person that went, this person went. Okay, that's what everyone's expecting. It makes training up a little bit more, interesting because okay, how far up do you have to move, or how far down can you move, and still get kind of what you're looking for. It adds the optionality. So I prefer that Wild West type setup, and I think you're gonna have a lot of directions you can go with this. And I think you're still in that best player available, kind of whatever happens, and everything else fall where it may.
Yeah, definitely. And it is the most fun method of like draft when it is all over the place. And it certainly makes owning a pick at the top of that draft, I mean, exceedingly valuable because there are plenty of years where you have a top 5 pick and no one's interested in moving up because they could sit at 9 or 10 and get a player that isn't much worse or isn't is a little more risky but similar talent. This year, having a pick in the top 5 or 6, it's going to guarantee you to get interest if someone wants to move up and get one of those surefire blue chip prospects, which is fun.
No, absolutely. All right, so that's talking about you. Let's move on to the next team in the AFC South. So, continuing up the bottom, we have the Tennessee Titans. Again, another team that was really focused on building with what they have, and sort of took a shot at it last year. Didn't quite work out, so sold off. And this year was again accumulating asset year. Looking at some of the picks that he has, a little bit more draft capital, I'd say, than you had. But again, the quality of the draft capital may not be as attractive as it initially was. He's got his pick. He's got the Bengals first, the Falcons first, and the Saints first. The Falcons first is fairly nice. Number 9, I think you were saying, and his first. So he's got 2 top 10 picks. But then because of the run that Saints and Bengals just went on, he's got 2 pretty established playoff picks there. So that's going to be a little bit tougher. He's got the Saints pick in the second. He's got Browns, Chiefs, and Cardinals picks, again, playoff thirds, and then a couple of 5th-round picks. A little bit more built out in 27. He has Seahawks first. He has 3 seconds, Bengals, Seahawks, and Chiefs. And he's got 2/3 Bengals and Seahawks. So, again, he is just happy to grab whatever the team is, because you never know how everyone's team is going to turn out. And then from a player perspective, Shedeur Sanders had a nice end of the year. Not necessarily stat-wise, but very well could be set up as a starter in Cleveland at a very cheap cost, which is very nice for Luigi. Then a couple of dart throws, Isaiah Bond in Cleveland, Otto Albonia, a couple of defensive tackles like Zerhan Newton. Let me go down to no one really on IR right now. But again, some things to potentially grow around here. I think he'll likely get maybe a comp pick or 2 with some of these players hitting free agency. And I think he's also got them out on the trade block for potential trade bait or tagging. So, again, more draft capital, but you have better draft capital. Again, it's not a competition, but definitely doesn't have as many of those, I'd say, foundational pieces like you have to build around. But again, he's got a good start towards his rebuild.
Yeah, he's in a really good spot. Frankly, his 2027 draft capital does make me a little nervous. Having 6 picks in the top 64 is very useful, especially because I hear 2027 is supposed to be pretty favorable class for fantasy. A lot of players people like. No, it's all going to come down to drafting. If he can draft well, he's going to have a great team moving forward. I mean, yes, 2 of his first round picks are later, but he's got 1 pick in that sweet spot, the top 5 or 6, I believe, and then another pick at 9. And I mean, I could definitely see Sadiq falling to 9. And then, maybe you've lost out on the very top of the top wide receivers, running backs, and Mendoza, but you get the absolute best tight end. You don't have to worry about your tight end. He's going to be a beast. You get one of those franchise cornerstones. Everybody says the tight end isn't the most valuable position for our league, and I can agree that it's not a must-have, but having somebody who can put up big numbers is very useful. And then you got your 2 later picks to fill out defensive spots. Couple seconds, you can go defense or dart throw offense, and suddenly you've got a very nice roster moving forward. Yeah, he's not going to win the division this year, but I can definitely see half a dozen wins if he drafts well.
Yeah, I mean, that's all you can hope for is you're looking for the stuff to build around. Again, it's you hope for 1 or 2 of the guys you already have on your roster to kind of come into their own, hit on 2 or 3 and a couple more at least promising enough to either continue to hold or trade for what you put in or a little bit more, and just kind of keep acquiring. And again, some of the stuff he's just kind of taking a shot on. Like, nobody's quite sure what the hell happened with Christian Wilkins this year, but hey, that's a contract that he's got on his roster, and if he somehow returns to sanity, we'll see. But yeah, that's probably a bit of a long shot.
Well, it doesn't help that he's on the Raiders. I'm sure that doesn't help anyone's sanity.
Yeah, I mean, he's not signed by a team for a reason, but things get kind of silly in the offseason. In terms of what I'd like to see him do, I think he's got a good start to it, but I'd like to see him move off of some of the pieces that he has at the right time this year. I think he's trying to move Shedeur and a couple of these other pieces, thinking that they may not hold. I think he's just got to make sure he times it right. Some people like the Monken hire, some people don't. I mean, I think he just needs to time what he's doing based off of when this news is coming out, and making sure that he's getting the most for his situations. And again, it's just kind of best player available. And again, having later picks isn't a bad thing, best player available, because you can take a good player at a non-premium position and you still need to grow that position. So
it doesn't help that he's got some pieces that I'm sure he likes and that I would like on 1-year expiring deals. Like having Travis Jones either be tagged to go to free agency, having Emmanuel Wilson either tagged to go to free agency. Those are tough. Losing those guys is going to be painful. Those are the pieces that doesn't necessarily make a championship team, but they certainly help. They're cheaper, they're younger, they're productive when you need them to be. Losing those guys is going to suck. Zaven Collins, he's one of the odd men out. Yeah, he's still a little younger. He's going to be 27 here in a couple months, but $14 million. He's not super productive, so losing him isn't the most painful in the world. But I think losing Travis Jones is going to be a little painful. Or if he tags him, having Travis Jones go up to be, $15 million this year is going to hurt.
Yeah, that's fair. So RJ, we're talking about the AFC South. We finished up with the Colts, and now we're talking about the Titans. Thinking about things they should be doing based off of their draft capital and their existing players. Obviously, they're continuing to build. Is there anything you'd say on his roster you're looking at to say, hey, it'd be interesting to see what he can get for that on the market as he continues his build process?
Did anybody? I know you mentioned Shedeur, and that's probably a really interesting one to move off of and for other people to acquire. Do we mention Emmanuel Wilson? I mean, even if it's like a middling pick, capitalizing on that with the opportunity that he just goes back to being, one of the guys behind Josh Jacobs is very possible. So capitalize on that value while you can.
I mentioned it, but he is on an expiring deal, so it's going to be difficult for him to get much value out of it.
Yeah. Somebody's gonna have to be willing to give up like a fourth and pay him an obscene amount of money. No guarantee that it actually happens. He may find his way into free agency. Maybe one
Where
of
he's
the-
going to go for an obscene amount of money.
Yeah. Either way, he will be tens of millions of dollars next year.
Yes.
I think if somebody's willing to kind of pay up for Isaiah Bond, that's an interesting one. I think he holds some bit of value. I just don't know what. Like some people are relatively high on him. I do agree with Mike's statement on the Christian Wilkins. There's a likelihood that he gets picked up in the offseason, and then he actually does have some bit of value. So that'll be interesting to see. But as a whole, I think that's pretty much everything. Zaven Collins is another one, but just like Emmanuel Wilson, you'll have to pay him an extravagant amount of money to keep him. So, we don't know how many people are really out there looking to pay up, draft picks and money for a particular player.
Yeah, I agree.
Yep. So again, some ideas for him to continue his sell-off as he looks towards the future. So I'd say probably the most interesting team, and no offense to your Titans or even Jags, Colts, but
I'm
in
already
terms-
offended.
Well, then be offended. I don't care. Look, it's the number of decisions that the Texans has to make, and we were talking about this a little bit pre-show, Rory, and you made a great point about this. Is Texans has a very good, roster of high-end fantasy players. He's done a very good job, and he has the flowcharts to prove it of how he's turned his trades into foundational players. Once he got those players, he kind of stopped because it took a lot of capital, and he kind of had centralized a lot of his value into those players. Now it's building around that or moving some of those players off to fill out the rest of his roster. Had some bad luck this year. Kyler Murray getting injured, Darnell Washington getting injured, Michael Hotek getting injured, among others. Still had some very high-end performances. Jahmyr Gibbs is one of the top-performing running backs. Jamar Chase, one of the top-performing receivers. Another strong year from Devonta Freeman. Again, he's got, and he had kind of the darling of the draft for a while, Ja'Cory Krosky Merritt, or JCM, the way he kind of broke out in Washington. Had, a lot of good pieces to build around. Again, unfortunately, Kyler gets hurt. He doesn't quite have the rest of the firepower on defense that he needs to keep up with the Jags and ends up missing the playoffs. So now you're looking at the next year, and he's got a lot of one-year contracts that are coming off, which should help. He's got pretty decent in terms of cap space, but what do you do with Kyler Murray? What do you do with Jahmyr Gibbs as he goes into his option year next year and is a Pro Bowler? Do you continue to build around Jamar Chase and Devonta Smith, or do you do something else? Mark Andrews just signed for a lot of money in Baltimore. He's still owed about $18 million here. Is he a piece that you sell while you can? Maybe you sell low, or you hope that he continues to hold off likely, and it's still sort of a hot hand situation, and he can maybe stay healthy in Baltimore. And then what the hell do you do with the defense? Quinn Williams, unfortunately, again, bad luck, gets traded, it immediately gets injured. Not what you're looking for there, but really has a lot of work to do on his defense. So which direction do you go with this team? When I say which direction, I look at the Texans picks. He has his second and fifth this year, but all of his picks next year. So for a man who loves to trade and loves to flowchart his trades, he has 4 or 5 studs he could put out there and say, hey, after rollover, everyone's got picks, everyone's got cap space burning a hole in their pocket. Could he say, gonna roll it in one more year because, hey, I can throw it back in, shake it around, and maybe still win this division with Jags potentially not having Mahomes and my other 2 division mates in the rebuild process. He could enter a quick rebuild with what he has and win the division next year without necessarily waiting the way everybody else does, because it's going to be tough to get to some of the longer term assets here. But if he plays it right, I think he could absolutely find himself back at the top of this division. But that would require breaking up some of these studs, which he seems want to do. Anyways, that's a lot of opinions by me.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a good roster. I mean, it's not a great roster, but it's a good roster, and he's got a ridiculous amount of name value. There isn't a person on this planet that plays fantasy football that wouldn't immediately be interested if you said Jamar Chase or Jahmyr Gibbs are available for trade. I mean, the unfortunate part about being in a league like this is there's very few people that are dumb when it comes to trades. So it's really hard to get someone to overpay a huge amount for someone like Jamar Chase or Jahmyr Gibbs, but it's certainly something worth investigating. You can go, hey, I don't know, someone who's been a fringe contender for a while and they want a fancy piece to put on their roster to win their division. I've got Jamar Chase and I've got Jahmyr Gibbs, and I don't have very much on defense. How about you give me 2 firsts and 3 pieces I really like on defense, and I'll give you Jamar Chase and Devontae Smith. Or I'll give you Jamar Chase and Mark Andrews, and it gives you firepower on offense. Or you go the full rebuild route, and you go, I've got Jamar Chase and Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm willing to package them for a roster. You send those guys to someone with a bunch of youth and a bunch of picks, and then you begin the process of rebuilding it all. Either way, I don't think you can really run it back with this identical roster and expect much of a difference. Kyler Murray is just too big of a question mark for me at quarterback. But, I mean, where he stands now, he's in a decent spot.
So we have identified that Colts should be talking to Texans and offering his pick, the Bears pick, and the Ravens first.
Yeah, for Jahmyr Gibbs and Jamar Chase, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, I mean, in all honesty, I would be interested. I would certainly be interested in acquiring a piece like that. But I'm also self-aware enough that I'm more than a running back or wide receiver away from being a contender.
Yeah.
And just not ready to move that kind of capital for a piece like that.
I think in the general sense, your take on it is spot on. There's a lot of name value in these players. Selecting 1 or 2 noteworthy players to break down to fill out the rest of the roster, I think, is a fantastic idea. I probably would only do one of the wide receivers and not both. But I know that you're probably just using names as an example, more of like, do it this way.
Yeah.
But yeah, something like a Jamar Chase for, let's call it a lesser wide receiver, maybe a second round pick or 2, and then some like productive players on defense, call it like a starting middle linebacker and a rotation defensive end. I think that is the correct approach, just to flesh out the team. I too would have some concerns about Kyler. I definitely would wait until we know exactly what's going to go on. Now, don't get me wrong. This is definitely the type of roster that can get burned by waiting. But I think rather than like going out, exhausting the resources that he has, trying to find another quarterback, basically just wait and see if Kyler gets cut, or if he ends up being the Cardinals starting quarterback. Like, I would wait for that to be established before I'm searching for a quarterback. So fill out fill out the depth, and then worst case scenario, he might have to be one of the teams that scrambles and buys a cheap old quarterback. But yeah, I think that's the right approach. It's just breaking something down.
Yeah. And I mean, when it comes to Kyler, you can feel fairly confident even if he does get cut, which is totally possible. If he does get cut, he's likely to end up somewhere as a starter. It's pretty unlikely that Kyler doesn't find a team that's willing to employ him for at least one more year and test him out as a starter. Take the Steelers, for example. They just signed Mike McCarthy. It's pretty evident that they're not going the full rebuild route with youth. It is weird that they got a defensive coordinator that's a completely different scheme, but I don't think you bring Mike McCarthy in if you're planning on going the full rebuild route. He doesn't feel like that kind of a coach. He feels like the type that we're going to retool and go back again. Aaron Rodgers is like 44 years old. I don't know if he's going to be back here next year. And even if he is, if you have the opportunity to sign Kyler for $10 or $15 million, I think he's probably better than Aaron Rodgers as it stands.
Yeah, and again, I don't think the real life Cardinals cut Kyler. I think it's going to be a trade conversation if you're going to get him. And I think the contract makes it tough to do that next year. I think there's one more year that you have to wait, but either way, again, there's already rumor mills going of, hey, Mike McCarthy got that job because he can develop quarterbacks. And there's a lot of people in Pittsburgh or otherwise saying maybe Will Howard needs to get a look here. Again, I think day 3 guy last year, that's optimistic. But look, he's a Buckeye quarterback, and that hasn't really turned out well. But there's plenty of faith to go around when you are in that system and successful as Will was in that system. But again, so we'll see. I think waiting to see it makes a lot of sense. But again, I think there's striking at the right time, and I think that right time is going to be after rollover as some of the information starts to clarify. But he can still be kind of a first mover on it.
Will Howard got the raw end of the deal. He was easily like one of the best pocket passers coming out last year, but just the league doesn't value pocket passers anymore, so it's just unfortunate.
I do like the player. I think it'd be very interesting to see him get a starting role in Pittsburgh. That being said, he's really bad. And Texans, if you're listening to this, I'd be interested. I'll give you Kirk Cousins.
There you go. All right. Moving on to the champion of the AFC South this year, the Jacksonville Jaguars. Again, just the old adage, get the quarterback and figure everything else out. Patrick Mahomes is his quarterback, kind of carrying him along there. 2 stud running backs, Josh Jacobs and Kyren Williams. Having a little bit of trouble at the receiver position, but still got enough points to put together the division title. Again, defense, corners were insane. Even with Taron Arnold going down, Cooper DeJean, Sauce Gardner, Carlton Davis, pretty electric defensive back room. And then Cedric Gray being, 225 points and $1.5 million rookie contract. Unfortunately, I don't think that's going to carry forward. I'm surprised he did not make the Pro Bowl. But when he's time to get his non-rookie contract, that is going to cost a pretty penny. That said, some really strong pieces on defense, but a lot of filler. Mahomes being out to start the year next year could be troublesome. How does Ridley move on if he does go anywhere vis-a-vis the Titans, and where does he land if he does leave? And then what does that mean for the rest of the roster here? So Jags got to make a move because they do not currently have a quarterback on the roster. He has all of his picks, and I think like an extra 4th or something. But it's time to take something and convert it to a quarterback that can at least either bridge you to Mahomes, or it could be one of those rare occasions to flip Mahomes considering a potential loss of Kelsey and what that might mean. So, couple of decisions, but barring something crazy, it's going to be Jags and Texans fighting for the divisional title next year. So it's what do you do to level up the roster instead of tear down or make the major moves.
Yeah. The Jags is another roster that's in a weird spot. A lot of name value, but a lot of big gaps. I would say he's in one of the better positions when it comes to trade capital because he has two excellent players at arguably the hardest position in fantasy football to fill, running back. So if you go, hey, I got Josh Jacobs and Kyron Williams, and then I guess if people are interested in Isaiah Pacheco, that guy too. But I've got two great players. They're both still on the younger side, and I'm willing to deal them for youth and picks, and then flip those youth and picks for plate pieces you like and see what happens. That being said, Mahomes is probably going to miss the majority of the year. That's going to really suck for him.
Yep. RJ, what are your thoughts?
I think this is the ideal time to move Mahomes. Yeah, it's unfortunate that it's gotten to this, but I think moving to something of a similar value, younger, a little bit more. I mean, he's not injury prone himself, but yeah, that's true. Yeah, this is probably the time to just try to turn Mahomes into a younger quarterback that maybe isn't as established or proven. I don't know if you get anything on top of it. So that's an interesting one. I think Mahomes' value has kind of come back down to earth where he's kind of in line with the rest of the top tier. So if he get traded for somebody that, let's call it, was a 26-year-old quarterback that is a tier below as far as productivity, but was significantly cheaper, like I don't think you can get anything on top of it, but it's something that he definitely should seek out. Other than that, I don't know if there's anything that I'm really moving off of this roster. It's more a matter of buying. So, like, if he can find another wide receiver to buy and also happen to get rid of Calvin Ridley at the same time, awesome. But the majority of his moves should be a lot of like buying, just to shore up the weak points on his team, which is we all have a good idea of like what the weak points were because we just had a season. So, buying defensive tackle. There's a million defensive tackles that score at least 100 points that you could have for a third or a fourth round pick. So that shouldn't be a problem. Tight end might be a pain, but hopefully Strange takes a leap. But yeah, just buy wide receivers.
Strange had a solid year, and this feels like a good time to extend him.
Yeah.
But yeah, like,
do you want your tight end one to have 100 points over 17, 18 games? Like,
I mean, he did miss for 5 games in the middle. So 100 points over 12 games, it's good. If you can get that spun out through a whole season and you're looking at 150, 160 point tight end for $4 million, feels like pretty damn good value to me.
Yeah. If he puts up numbers like that, then you're fine. But yeah, those are the only three. Those are the only real points that I'm focusing on.
Mahomes this is the perfect time, like you said, to move off of him. He just had his best fantasy season in the last couple of years. He is getting, he's not old yet by any means, but he is getting a little older. He's expensive. His receivers perennially have injury or legal troubles every year. Reed is probably going to retire with Kelsey in a year or two.
I don't know if it's the perfect time more so than it is just the right time, because I mean perceivably his value is going to do nothing but slowly deteriorate from from here on out, I'd imagine. He's going to be going into his 30s, so we'll find every reason to scrutinize him regardless of production. So, like, get out when he's 29 rather than 30. I think that's an ideal spot to be in. Like we've referenced multiple times, all of his weapons are going to be almost non-existent in the next few years.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's would you get the same type of value now compared to, let's call it, 2 years ago? No. At the height of his powers, I guess would have been the ideal time to move him. But would that have really have been the ideal time to move him? Because you'd rather
No,
have the
no.
production. So, yeah, this is the sweet spot of just send him off to somebody that is a quarterback away from being a championship.
So I'm going to go the same route that RJ did a second ago here. I'm going to follow the same trail and put Colts on the spot here. You don't actually have to answer it. But for a team that's building and a team that has a pretty valuable pick this year, it would be interesting to see the Colts say take their first and second round pick and go to the Jags and say, give me Mahomes, give me your first this year, and give me Calvin Ridley. Yeah, the second pick, which is presumably Mendoza. You have an early second round pick as well, and you just moved $44 million off of your team. Whereas the Colts, who have no delusions of winning their division next year, take a second and make it a first, throw Ridley on the IR and see where he lands and flip him for some kind of draft capital, and have Mahomes sit out and the quarterback of the future right there on the roster that they don't have to do anything with. That's the kind of deal I think that makes a lot of sense for everybody. Problem is, it's in the division, and who knows if Colts even likes Mahomes. So
I am a Chargers fan, so no, I mean, I see the idea behind it, and it's not something that I would out and out dismiss, but it is one of those ones that makes it tough because it is an in-division move, which means there's going to be a division tax, and I don't know which direction would be the division tax. Would be what I want, more than I'm getting back. Would the Jags want more than they're getting back? But the big one is that's probably a move that needs to happen on the clock, because if I'm sitting there, it's 2, and Jeremiah Love goes, and there's Mendoza, then absolutely it makes sense. But if I'm sitting there 2, and the Broncos decided they're going to go get their quarterback in the future, now suddenly I'm sitting there with Jeremiah Love, and the Jags go, you know what? I can find a journeyman quarterback, and now I've got Josh Jacobs, Kyren Williams, and Jeremiah Love on my team. That suddenly gets a lot harder pill to swallow. That being said, Mahomes is a very movable asset. If I wanted to sit him on my IR and look to using him next year, if I wanted to move him in 6 months to somebody who's quarterback needy, whatever, that's an option. That's certainly a good option. So,
yeah,
I don't know.
and again,
Something to have a conversation with the Jags about if they're interested.
It's a good structure to start with. Or, hey, if I'm Bears, yes, I just paid up with me, and we'll talk about that trade a little bit later, to get Joe Burrow. He's a big Burrow fan, but do you then turn around and say, hey, I got Burrow, you've got Mahomes, you want a big name quarterback, give me something on top of Mahomes, and you can have Burrow. Maybe that turns into same kind of package. First, Mahomes and Ridley, and I get Burrow. Again, that seems like enough, but again, it's adding the first to Mahomes to get Burrow. That might be a bridge too far for him. But and then the other thing is, like you said, the running backs. He's got Kyren Williams. He's got Josh Jacobs. He just renegotiated Pacheco, hoping that he comes back to form in Kansas City. Getting stuck with Jeremiah Love is, again, getting stuck with Jeremiah Love. Yeah, that's not exactly getting stuck with something in terms of a fantasy asset, especially running back in fantasy. But, the last thing the team needs is another running back. So as a team that's more trying to win, being put in a position where you're drafting for best player available versus some need alignment would make it a tough thing to do to go get Love. But that kind of deal is, I think, something that makes sense. Helps reset the clock on some youth, leveraging Mahomes. But again, we'll see what people do. Actually, oh god, there's not absolutely the team to do that is the Dolphins, isn't it? Because they had my pick.
Probably.
Problem is that doesn't necessarily turn into Mendoza.
It does if they trade me the third pick.
Well, again, things to think about. All right, let's move to the North. Bengals, Browns, Steelers, Ravens. 3 of them made the playoffs at 15-2, 14-3, and 13-4, respectively. We'll start with the poor, also ran Ravens, going 0-6 in the division for shame, and still finished 8-9. So, very good team. Pivoted a little bit towards building for the future, but definitely far from calling this a rebuild. Looking at players on the roster, Sam Darnold having a little bit of injury challenges, but is going back to the Super Bowl. Good for him, coming off of back-to-back 14-win seasons. Jordan Mason, Tony Pollard, very solid running backs. Tyler Algier continues to thrive in sort of a second running back role. Part of the pivoting that Ravens did at the deadline, picked up Matthew Golden, probably at a bit of a discount. DJ Moore is a bit of a out of favor receiver, but still a pretty valuable fantasy asset, especially at that contract value. And then Tyreek Hill. He has been franchise tagged for next year because he has to be, but it's a question of will he actually have an NFL team next year? Probably, but again, still. Some other good journeyman players on offense, switching to defense. Good depth kind of across the board. A couple of big names around his linebackers, Landman and Sherwood. Sherwood at a song in terms of what he's getting paid. Landman, not so much, but it's better than it used to be. Again, he had a very well-rounded roster, which led to a lot of his points. Looking at the injured reserve, nothing really to write home about, but could be some very usable players. Picks, he has the Pat second and the Cowboys fourth in 26. He has Cowboys and Cardinals second in 27 and 2 fifths in 27. So not a whole lot of draft capital either. But that said, his strength has been his depth. His strength has been in a couple of positions. And with very few exceptions, nothing's aging out on this roster, like I said, except for the, Tyreek Hill and other small exceptions.
Yeah, it's a good team. He is certainly going to run into the issue of aging and or pricing out pretty quickly. But as of right now, I don't know. You'd be hard pressed to find a better roster that missed the playoffs.
There might be 3 better rosters in the division.
Well, I just mean you'd be hard pressed. Yes, there are better rosters in his division, but I don't know if there's many rosters that miss the playoffs that are better than his, if any.
That's fair. All right, RJ, what are your thoughts?
It has. So this is one of the teams that has all the depth that you want, but you have none of the home run players. And I definitely understand that a handful of them were traded off. Like Tyreek Hill was injured, so his point total doesn't necessarily equate last season to him being an impactful player, and he definitely is. But you can get by with the running backs that he has. That's perfect. They're all plug and play. The wide receivers are deep enough, but when you get to the defensive side of it, Highsmith is a bright point, but like you need or ideally you want more consistent defensive tackles. What did Dexter do last year? He was hurt. Yeah. Lawrence was somewhat ineffective. And like, yeah, a couple of this was just like regression. But like going out and buying a stud defensive tackle and not hoping that Tavondre Sweat becomes a stud, or not, not hoping that Darius Robinson becomes a stud next year. Like already having one established on the roster will be fantastic. Same goes for linebacker. Or yeah, linebacker. No, linebacker's good. I'm sorry. Got confused there. Same goes for defensive tackle. Like Highsmith's fantastic. He's going to get you points consistently. A lot of the guys are really fantastic. Like for different times throughout the year, but are you going to be able to find another Dondra Tillman who is able to pull 102 points out of nowhere? So like just going out and grabbing another established defensive end that's going to play 75% of snaps for their team, like that would be ideal. Linebackers are pretty good. Maybe grab one or two depth pieces. Secondary is all right, but same thing, get an established cornerback. So offense is fantastic. Ride that to victory, but like he just needs studs on defense.
Yeah, you're right.
But this is far from a team where you like start to peel things away. Like sure, maybe you capitalize on Tony Pollard's consistency now that he's starting to get a little bit older. Maybe move him for a lesser running back, maybe another pass catcher, and then like a stud defensive tackle. Like those are the only real moves that I would suggest. And then like the draft picks that's the hard thing. Like I wouldn't necessarily suggest going out and buying with like whatever draft picks are around, because like look at that division. You have to hold on to your draft picks just on the off chance that your guys aren't as productive as Steelers. And like, it could boil down to something, that small. Like Steelers has 260-point defensive ends and you only have one, and that's going to be the deciding factor in both of the games, and you don't make the playoffs. So,
Yeah.
it's just one of those divisions that like you can try your hardest and then just bad luck, a string of bad luck, or maybe just, a couple instances of horribly timed bad luck and you're out of the playoffs. So like just hold on to those draft picks, especially the ones that are associated with the team.
I think you nailed it.
Yeah, that's what you got to do.
I think that's one of the few times where all of us would suggest holding on to those draft picks. And I think it's more just of the division rather than it is the team per se.
Yeah, I mean, you just, like you said, you can't predict how each season is going to go when your team is this good, but your division mates are this good. And frankly, what could you truly add with the draft picks you have that would be enough to put you head and shoulders above the guys you're playing? I don't know of a whole lot of big pieces that would go cheap enough for that. You just got to hope you draft well, and some of the guys that you draft end up being studs that put you over the top rather than trying to buy them.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this may be the team that's just like digging around at the expiring contracts. Like once we switch over years and there's a new list of 1-year guys, Ravens would benefit from trying to snag some of those, 35-year-old guys where we aren't quite sure what's going to happen in the off season, and just low cost, potentially high reward.
Yep. Again, I think that's a good thing to think about. Unfortunately, he doesn't have any of his picks for next year, but that's, as I would say, future Ravens problem. All right, let's jump to the Steelers. 13-4. Just good for him for getting over the hump in the first place. Benefited from a midseason resurgence of Joe Flacco on a minimum deal. Like I so much about what happened to Steelers last year just makes me happy. Started out with a decent but not super electric performance from Trevor Lawrence. So just when all seems lost and he needs quarterback help, here comes riding on a white horse Joe Flacco, who gets traded from the Browns to the Bengals and puts up 4 straight games of 20 plus points at 21.3, 28.98, almost 26, and 33.7. Right after that, and he goes into the bye week, it's, well, Flacco's my QB1 and Trevor Lawrence is my QB2. Apparently, Lawrence hears this and finishes the season 16.2, 18.3, 22.7, 20.1, 45.9, 33.1, and 24.9. Like, went from also ran to hold my beer and just finished the season on fuego for the Steelers. So just sometimes there's a team of destiny, and he didn't win it all, but the Steelers definitely had that destiny. Same kind of thing. James Cook almost getting 300 points. Rashid Shaheed is his top performing receiver at 210 points. Depth at tight end taking care of him, but he had good options there. And again, a defense carried by Jordan Brooks, who's still on just an absurd contract. Add this all up with a couple of interesting players on his IR, like J.K. Dobbins and others. And again, he's going to be in contention for the playoffs next year. There's no question about it. Picks wise, if he wants to shuffle some things around, it's going to be a little bit difficult. He's got Kansas City's second this year, which is quite late, and his fourth next year. So, any moves, and he's got to basically do it with the players he has on roster, which are quite good. But again, it's a little bit constricting in terms of what he can pull off.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing is there's not a whole lot that Steelers needs to do to improve his team. The vast majority of positions, it wouldn't be a terrible idea to add, a productive depth piece. A third defensive end that's going to score over 100 points. Third linebacker that's going to score over 100 points. But all in all, this team's just ready to go into next season. Like, this is a good team, and to my knowledge, the vast majority of these guys are going to have the same type of roles next year, or that should be the expectation.
Yeah, I mean, that is one of the strangest collections of receivers I've ever seen, and it works perfectly for his team. Mm-hmm. That is just a great roster. If Lawrence can keep it up, if Rashid Shaheed can keep it up, if James Cook continues to be dominant, he's got offense pretty well taken care of.
Yeah, this was one of those teams where everything broke correct for him. Like, we were kind of unsure of what was going to happen with James Cook. Ends up leading the league in rushing, if I'm not mistaken. The wide receivers, Jacoby Myers was kind of floundering in Las Vegas. Shaheed was an afterthought in New Orleans. Both of them just exploded this year. Like, Steelers couldn't ask for anything better to have come out this year. I mean, he could have asked for a championship, but as far as regular season results, it was pretty fantastic for how a lot of his players established themselves. And I think going forward, we should expect the same thing from the majority of them. I think Kayshawn's probably going to be far more productive than 121 points for New England next year, but I think all of us could have called that. We see the writing on the wall. He'll be the guy to throw to next year.
Yeah, I really like Moody. He coming out of college, he got a bad rap. What 6th round, and I mean he's looked for the most part has looked the part as an NFL receiver.
Oh yeah, I mean, I could say like he fell just due to like basically an off season of like negative talk. A lot of people questioned his effort, and then like rookie mini camp, I remember knowing like there were a lot of reports out of New England like no, that there's no possible way that this guy ever had work ethic issues.
Which is great news for him because he should be, after Diggs retires or leaves the team or whatever he's going to do, the number one guy in New England.
All right. Well, sorry, I got sidetracked. We'll talk about this trade when we get to the trades, but Mark just got set on some big deal happenings, so we'll touch on that in a little bit. Moving up from the Steelers, we'll go to the Browns next. 14-3. Justin, let's see, 14-3. For a while, Browns is working through some journeyman quarterbacks, but he was able to build himself a pretty nice stable of receivers that he's been able to rotate. Hit the jackpot with Chase Brown and Bucky Irving last year and rode that into this year. And as mentioned, locked down Justin Herbert instead of his journeyman quarterbacks. Depth is just wonderful across the roster. There's a reason he's usually one of the favorites in the league every single year, unfortunately. So enough glazing of his roster. It's super deep on offense. It's pretty deep on defense, highlighted by a couple of really good defensive ends, especially for the contract value that they've had. Just unfortunately got cold at the wrong time and didn't have the depth at linebacker and defensive tackle to kind of carry the day. But he's got 2 firsts, his and Giants this year, to continue to reload. A lot of intriguing players if you wanted to move off of them to continue to rebuild with. Actually, I think even Chase Brown is up on the trade block right now. Going to cost a pretty penny to extend him, but still, a player of his caliber, someone's going to pay up for it. We just saw a player in the same, I think, draft class get a nice return for another team. So I'd say the thing with Browns, but he's going to have some challenges with, is really good receiving core and really good kind of across the board players, but rotating the ones he wants to rotate may be challenging until there's some solidified situations. Like A.J. Brown, great player, 200-point player in this league, one of the best receivers in the league. If he might get traded, it might be hard for him to recycle him to something younger. Terry McLaurin, again, very good player, went on the field. Production dropped because of part-time last year and Jaden Daniels being out last year. But, again, Pro Bowler in 24 in this league. What can he do or trade him for this year? Khalil Shakir, target hog for Josh Allen for most of the year, disappeared the last 6 weeks or so. It's a really good best ball team, but you get the sense that he's trying to get out of some of these players before they start hitting the age decline. And it may be a little late on some for him to get what he normally wants to get in some of these deals. And he's might have to take 90 cents on the dollar in others. But it's a great roster. Not a rebuild situation. It's a refresh situation.
Yep. I would say to reference that this is definitely one of those teams that could have a Steelers-esque I'm sorry, not Steelers, a Ravens-esque 2026, where a lot of the players regress due to age or a handful of other things. And then, the 160 point 32-year-old defensive tackle, goes back to putting up 80 points. Like you said, AJ Brown goes to a place that's a little bit less, beneficial to him. Terry gets a little bit older, loses another step. How many points does he put up? So if he stays put, this team can definitely age out and become, almost 500 type of team. So I do agree pivoting off of some of those players. He might have waited too long on a few of them, and a couple of those players might be ideal to just hold on to at this point. I think he has the right idea. If I'm not mistaken, sometime recently he had a trade bait update, referenced players like Byron Young. Who's the other one that's about to get really expensive on his roster?
I think
Um,
probably Chase Brown.
uh, Chase Brown is. I don't know if I would move off Chase Brown, although that is a good, you know, yeah, probably not a terrible idea having Bucky. Um, oh, Montez Sweat. So like moving off of Montez Sweat right now, for a defensive end and a mid-level pick. Let's call it a late third rounder. Probably not a terrible idea, especially with the Pro Bowls on his contract info. And Byron Young, great example of like a young player that'll probably be productive for years. He'll get a good deal of value. Probably not the value of a $200 million player. But yeah, definitely turning those into other things, a little bit safer contract wise, and maybe accumulating some picks probably is the way to go. But yeah, I do think, to Mike's point, I think maybe the window on moving some of the higher end players has kind of passed just due to age or regression or a combination of both.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think the time to move Byron Young was probably, what was it, last year? When was his big year? Where he was still cheap.
Every year he's played football has been a big year, I'm pretty sure. Dude, just
Fair. He is a very good player. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying he's not a good player. It feels like last year had like 250 points, and I might be.
Yeah, he definitely did. Something along those lines.
Either way, I mean, there's a lot of players that I wouldn't touch in his roster. Young, as expensive he's going to get, is going to be very difficult to move off of. But guys like AJ Brown just got, they're getting older. They have a lot of controversy surrounding him. It's going to be a challenge to move off of some of these guys. Some of his maybe lesser wanted players.
Yeah, I don't know. I take the approach of like for Young specifically. So if we're comparing like AJ Brown to Byron Young, maybe the haul isn't necessarily the same, but like there is not a defined market for Byron Young because the contract hasn't been put in place yet. So there is a chance that you could trade him off for slightly more than what his assumed value would be post contract. Whereas like AJ Brown, we just know $18 million wide receiver stud. Oh, he has a Pro Bowl tag too. All right, so there's a chance he holds out. But well, he's not getting. He's got 4 years, so he's fine. So yeah, $18 million wide receiver. We already know like there's an established value for that. It's
That's true.
like it's either pay it or don't pay it. Where like you know, like Young's more of a gray area
You
where
can kind
like,
of set the market on Young.
yeah, you might be able to squeeze an extra rounder out of somebody, and then they realize what his value is, post extending that contract.
Yeah.
But go on. I completely
Oh no, that
interrupted you.
was pretty much all I really had to say on the Browns roster. I mean, they are a couple small things breaking one way or another from being the Bengals or the Steelers.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
I mean,
that's unfortunately how it comes
lucky-
down with some of these teams.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
really like your team. His team is as good as the Bengals team. It's just a matter of how did things turn out 2 or 3 of the weeks in the season, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I think we all share the same mindset as like all of these teams are double digit wins if they're in another division, like whether it be 13, 14, some
I agree.
so like, if Browns happens to be the Steelers of next year and they have close to a 500 record, 8-9, 9-8, something like that, the record doesn't necessarily dictate the quality of team, especially in this division.
Yeah.
All right. Well, last but not least, let's move to our current champion, Cincinnati Bengals. Not a whole lot to say here. Stafford had a hell of a season, and he was able to pick him up at the right time and ride it to a title because Tua really fell apart. Depth at running back, especially with the emergence of Kyle Mahanahay, or Monangai, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce things.
I don't know how to pronounce his name either.
JSN getting 350 points was not bad. Him getting 300 other 200-point receivers in Waddle, Tet, and Michael Pittman, not bad either. 300 points at tight end from Trey McBride. Oh shit! But the problem's going to be paying him now. 2 years left, 5th-year option, just hit the Pro Bowl, and some tight ends are out there that are expensive. So McBride might be too. Moving to defense, again, deep enough across the board, really separated by the value that is Jeffrey Simmons, who is the defensive tackle, what guys like Joe Mauer was to catcher in fantasy baseball. Just having him at that position is a major advantage because of the point differential between him and other defensive tackles. Definitely could be doing some things to upgrade a couple of spots on his defense. Corner is a little bit lower price to be able to upgrade, but D-end is something that he should take a look at, especially with the potential demise of the great Van Ginkel. But look, this is a really, really good team. This is a team that is going to be in the hunt again next year. He's not going to make a lot of major moves, but making some small moves around the edges just to add some depth at the end, at corner, and then a couple of other spots is not a bad idea.
He has been very aggressive in buying and selling. I don't know how he's been talking to other people, but he was talking to me quite a bit after rollover or after the end of the season. He's shopping Pittman, he's shopping Waddle, he's honestly shopping McBride. He's being aggressive. He's aware that his window is tight. He doesn't have a lot of room to make moves. I think the only reason he's willing to move Trey McBride is because he knows he's going to be a lot of money. But he's one of those teams that is so young while also being so good. I truly can't figure out how he got there. I mean, looking at his roster, he's got some older guys. Danielle Hunter is at 31. Ginkel's 30. Those guys are getting up there. But Jonathan Grenard's 28. He's got the Dallas DN that had a solid 100-point season. Carl Granderson's solid. He's 29. Simmons is solid. He's 28, which feels like he's been in the league for over a decade already. I don't know how he's only 28. JSN's in his third year. Second year. Is this really his second year? No, third year. Pittman, Tedera, rookie. How did the roster like this end up with Tedera? I don't understand.
Because Mike traded it to him.
Oh, the truth comes out. But I mean, he's in such a great spot.
Hold on. I don't want to blame Mike and be completely wrong.
But who?
Tet. Were you the one that sent Tet to the Bengals?
Yeah, but again, it was the deal where I sent him Tua and got Burrow back, and then got Ayuk back when it looked like Ayuk might actually show up for the season.
Yeah, you weren't doing anything wrong. I guess, also a commentary on just the embarrassment of riches that Bengals has, to where they could make that trade. But yeah, when Burrow went down, that trade happened.
Yeah, but I mean, like that roster, if he can find somebody that'll take Demario Davis, Demario Davis's contract. I mean, that guy's 37 and somehow still putting up phenomenal numbers, but he is $22 million.
Still gonna play like another 6 years.
I know these guys gonna be playing like Brady in his 40s. Yeah. But as good as he is, he's that old. He's $22 million. You have other great linebackers. If you can manage to get rid of him without taking any cap on, you can afford to pay Trey McBride, and we're right back where we were last year.
I don't know. I don't hate the idea of repurposing some of this stuff. Like, sure, hold on to JSN. If you want to hold on to Tet, why not? But yeah, like completely rebuild the team with the players that he likes. Like, I think that that's a fantastic idea, if these aren't already players that he is fond of. Yeah, there's so much value laying around on this team that, like, yeah, you can keep buying the Tets of like the next few years, and just keep rinsing and repeating. Like he will find a way to do it. As of right now, Trey McBride is the one that needs to be addressed, the biggest one. Yeah.
But again, if he gets rid of Demario Davis, he's got the cap.
I mean, he get rid of Demario Davis along with getting rid of somebody like a Trey McBride and turning that into a stud, a slightly lesser tight end and an even better, younger, more consistent linebacker.
Yeah.
Who was the team that had Jordan Brooks on it? Was that
Steelers, I think. Which, yeah. I don't know if you're ever getting an in-division trade like that.
No, probably not. But, turning that into Dalton Kincaid and Jordan Brooks.
Yeah.
You could do worse.
Right.
You absolutely could do worse.
All right. Enough previews. We've finished the AFC. We'll move on to the NFC starting next week. As you appropriately put it, this is the dead time, Colts, between the end of our fantasy season and the end of the playoffs. And then that's the dead time before rollover and the draft. But again, that leaves to us getting picks and a lot more cap space, so that makes some of the stuff much, much easier. Let's look at what trades have happened since last week. Gave people kind of a challenge to, hey, can you make a bunch of deals so we would have to do 3 podcasts in 1 week? That didn't happen, which is probably for the best because I think I needed a break. My voice needed a break. And I think RJ needed a break. 2 times in 1 week is tough. We could still do 3, I'm sure, but it's good to kind of get our legs back under us and ease into this and not, injure ourselves from doing too much too fast.
Yeah, getting back into the groove of it is good. But, I think we'll shoot for some crazy numbers when we get closer to draft time. That's when we're actually in the swing of things. Then pulling off 3 isn't the feat of stamina that it is now.
This is true. All right. So I think there have been 11 trades since we did the second podcast last week on Wednesday. So I'll start with the Saints and Bears. Bears giving up Zion McCollum and Antoine Winfield for a Rams third and the Saints fourth. The Rams third is in 26 and the Saints fourth is 27. Look, I know safeties are undervalued, especially this kind of year, but this is a very cheap Antoine Winfield.
Yeah, no, fantastic trade for the Saints. I too would have bought a productive safety of that caliber and a cornerback for a third and a fourth. So, hats off to him. That's a good trade.
Yep. Speaking of good trades, Chargers moving players for picks. Bill moving picks for players, which is one of these is out of the ordinary. Sam Laporta and the Cardinals third next year for the Jets first this year. We know Bill is moving more and more things towards 27 picks. This is cheap for Laporta as far as I'm concerned. Look, a player like Laporta is a first half of the first round pick, not the second half of the first round pick, as well as I think in the 20s for the Jets. Plus getting a third on top of it. Kudos to Bill for getting it. But
right in the middle of trade negotiations too. What a dick.
Do we know what's wrong with his back?
Laporta?
Yeah, because I know he had surgery on it, which I'm never fond of any type of surgery to the back.
Google says herniated disc, but you know how those things are never 100% accurate. Sometimes they'd say an injury is one thing when there's really some other underlying stuff going on.
Chargers might be ahead of the curve on this one. Like, you probably could have squeezed out more value from Laporta. But yeah, I question how productive Laporta will be going forward. Productive along with how his likelihood of staying on the field for an extended period of time. I do think he's probably injury prone at this point.
Yeah, I was not aware of the injury. If that is the case, then not a bad idea for sure. All right.
Yeah, I definitely, like I said, I think there could have been more value, but this might end up being a really smart move.
See, this is why I appreciate having you guys on this, because you take me from a situation where I was going to stick my whole foot in my mouth and about 3 feet down my throat, to just, my toes getting in there. All right, Chargers continuing the sell-off, AJ Terrell and a fourth for the Cowboys, third this year, Devin Duvernay and Gabe Davis. The chief special of, let me give you 2 players you don't want and a better pick for a player I want and a pick that I'm still getting back in return. I feel like that's the basic structure for many, many Goose trade offers.
That's every trade offer I've ever received.
Yeah, I would have thought Duvernay was worth more than a 4th round pick by himself. Yeah, I don't know. This one confuses me. Is he just going to be unemployed at the end of the year? Like, his Has Chicago already said that they have no interest in having him back? Oh,
He's one
That's
of those players that doesn't really get retained. Like they're not a priority on retaining, if that makes sense. He might
No.
come back, but
no, but he gets signed every year. He ends up beating out whoever they wanted as the return guy because he's just better at returns, and then he ends up putting up 100 points.
yeah, this also, predicates on if the return changes, the return scoring gets changed, and then suddenly it's not like return scoring isn't as big as it was before. Then Duvernay drops to 30 points or something.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay.
It's still a nice boost, though. I mean, he's still going to get an extra 80 to 100 points from the return.
Right.
So,
True.
all right. Saints going by in a little bit more, getting Nnamdi Matabuke and Jaquan Brisker from Bill for the Steelers 27 second round pick.
I think this is great for both sides.
Yep, nice little win-win. Broncos moving the Bears 26 third for Pat's 27 third and your 5th round pick in 27, RJ. Falcons buying Clavon Chason for Chargers 27 third. Again, I think this was right off of a pretty, I won't say epic, but pretty solid playoff performance by Chason. So, hey, good grab. And then let me take a deep breath before I read this one. Hendon Hooker, the Panthers first, but in 26. Bills third in 27. Cardinals third in 27. Pats third in 27. Bears fifth in 27. Cardinals fifth in 27. And Eagles fifth in 27. For Calvin Austin the third. DeForest Buckner. The Cowboys first in 27 and the Broncos second in 27. So major consolidation of draft capital. Picking up DeForest Buckner and Calvin Austin and getting his second round pick back.
Is it just me, or does all of that just feel like an attempt at getting his second round pick?
Motivation.
That and turning a 26 first into a 27 first.
Yeah. But his second round pick was the only reason this trade happened. He went and found who had his 2027 pick and went, I want that back.
Correct. And then probably expanded from there.
Mm-hmm. Got a kick out of it. That's a funny trade. The
Well,
fact that Hendon Hooker is being part of any trades is hilarious.
hey, you lay off my Hooker.
Oh, he's still around.
Well, I'll give credit here. I mean, we've got 4 trades to go, and there's a theme for these 4 trades. I'll say, based off of this, Seahawks need to make another trade with somebody to keep this trend going. So, Giants and Falcons make a trade. Keenan Allen for the Commanders 4th. So, Giants turns around and makes a trade with the Eagles. Christian Barmore for the Raiders 4th. Eagles then turn around and make a deal with the Buccaneers. John Franklin Myers and the Cardinals 2nd for Harrison Phillips, the Lions 4th, and the Eagles 2nd. And then the Buccaneers turn around and make a deal with the Seahawks. And this is what happened during the podcast that we were reacting to. Zach Charbonnet, the Steelers 1st and 26, the Cardinals 2nd and 26, the Steelers 4th and 26, the Commanders 4th and 26, Commanders 2nd and 27, and my 2nd and 27 for Devon Achane.
That was a heck of a trade. I have no idea what to make of this. Is this the right value? I don't have a clue. There's so many pieces. I don't even know the first thing.
I mean, the first is 130, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that's where Steelers finished. That's the draft order.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Getting Devon Achane for 0 picks in the top, honestly, the top 15 is a pretty damn good deal.
I mean, on surface level, it feels fantastic. Is that offense going to be overhauled in such a way that he loses some type of his productivity?
I mean, almost certainly, but he's got a lot of productivity to lose before it's not really worth it. The guy had
Right.
312 points. If he goes out next year and he won't turn 25 until October. If he goes out next year and is healthy and puts up 260, I still think that's a good trade.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I do think I don't know if I want to call the overall like value of the draft picks as like light compared to Achan because there's one, two, there's 3 seconds in there, and those can be pretty decent quality, or there's a chance of them. So I don't want to say this was like a you know he got a steal, but like it's a great way to put a handful of things together and turn it into a more productive piece. Because I mean, if you take a running back at 130 or any of those second round picks, does it turn into HN? Probably
Almost
not.
certainly not.
And then you get
Yeah.
the gamble of Charbonnet. Like, is that only ACL?
Charbonnet, I don't know, but I want to say yes. It didn't sound like it was more than.
Like he may just end up being in a year or two, he may end up being a top 15 running back. So, this,
Yeah, it was just the ACL according to this.
yeah. So like, I don't know. That could end up being like a really good haul. Yeah,
Yeah,
I kind of like it for both of them.
if Charbonnet doesn't leave the Seahawks, it's probably a win on the Bucs side. If Charbonnet does leave the Seahawks, or Kenneth Walker leaves the Seahawks and Charbonnet is a feature back, excuse me, yeah, then I think it's probably a win for the Seahawks.
Yep.
So, I mean, either way, though, I struggle giving up Charbonnet because even as a backup, he put up 160 points. And as good as Charbonnet is, that's a lot of points to go with all those picks at a very, very premium position.
So interestingly enough, when I look at like Seahawks and him making that move, I don't think we've gotten to the NFC talking about things to improve. But if he's taken a bit of information from the previous podcasts, that's probably thinking a little too highly of ourselves. But like defensive end is probably a point that he wants to strengthen, or just overall depth on defense. And moving HN for a haul like that, like now all he has to do is go out and buy that depth, and then use the first round pick to maybe go buy a running back. And if Charbonnet comes back and is productive, he's replaced that 200 points between two players, 300 points. I'm sorry. Between two players, and added a whole bunch of productive pieces on defense. So yeah, this could end up working out really good for Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you both. I love the trade because it's a classic. I'm gonna buy a dollar with 10 dimes. And those type of trades almost never turn out to be 10 dimes.
Yep.
You might get a quarter in there, but usually get a lot of nickels and a bunch of pennies. But a non-zero bet part of Achan's performance was Mike McDaniel. The guy's a savant when it comes to the run game and scheming backs open. Like, just again, let's remind ourselves what he did with Raheem Mostert and many other of the cheaper running backs that have went through San Francisco and also performed pretty fantastically in Miami over the last few years. So if you are a believer that he may regress with McDaniel not being there, this is the time to sell him. And to sell him for a bunch of picks, which if you look at this roster, he didn't exactly shy away from older players if they were going to help him, score points this year. So now he gets a barrel of draft capital to use to put youth behind his experience and maintain. And all it cost him was a downgrade at running back, where he has King Henry and other depth anyway. So it's a great trade in terms of getting Achane probably cheaper than he could have otherwise for Bucks. And it's a great sell high and restock the cupboard deal for the Seahawks. So everybody wins.
Yeah.
All right. So normally we go about an hour, because if you two lovely gentlemen, we're at about an hour and 35 minutes. So we're going to stop it pretty abruptly right here, because it's time to get to the post pod, which is the more fun part anyway. And, my voice is starting to go on me. I've been talking a lot the last couple of days, and I just cap it off with a long talk here. So I think we're going to go ahead and